The Nightcast Before Christmas, sponsored by Aegon. Just what you're looking for at aegonins.com.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bruce Allen.
And I'm Liz Mathis. We want to welcome you on this Christmas Eve to another holiday edition of TV9 News Nightcast.
We call it the Nightcast Before Christmas, and tonight we'll be looking back at some of the top stories TV9 News has covered this year.
It's been quite a year. Iowa voting went smoothly, but we saw one of the most bizarre, presidential elections in history.
Al Gore won the popular vote in Iowa and in the nation, but after that long legal battle down in Florida, George W. Bush wound up the winner of the electoral vote. He'll be moving into the White House in January.
And believe it or not, there was other news this year. One of the biggest stories caused us some concern at this time last year. It was a potential world crisis that never really surfaced.
Ah, yes. How can we forget the Y2K computer scare? And if you were stocking up on food and supplies at this time last year, you were not alone. Many of us were afraid the Y2K bug would really bite hard. There was a chance that computers might not recognize any dates past 1999 and would simply shut down. Some people were afraid power grids, air traffic control towers, and even home appliances would malfunction. Well, TV9's Joe Coffey shows that nothing happened, but that doesn't mean it was a non-event.
Many people prepared for Y2K like they were preparing for a nuclear holocaust. Gas generator sales skyrocketed. People were afraid computers would shut down at midnight because they wouldn't be able to recognize the digits 2000. More than 1,000 workers at Alliant Energy gave up their weekend and checked 14 million lines of computer code. Even personal computers were a threat.
Keeping my computer off until a couple days after the New Year. That's about it. Just worried about the viruses and stuff that are on the internet.
Police departments were double-staffed. 911 centers were on standby. Emergency management agencies were on standby. And then the moment came. Planes did not fall out of the sky. Nothing exploded. No one was killed. At the Lynn County Emergency Management Center, this is what their emergency radio sounded like. Bank computers did not shut down. ATMs still worked.
It's business as usual for banks and their customers.
There were a few concerns. The Pentagon said a spy satellite lost communications.
And for a period of several hours, we were not able to process information from that system.
In eastern Iowa, there was a small situation.
There was one that came to light. It was a utility problem, and that was because somebody released a Mylar balloon and it got into a transformer and arced that knocked it out. The same thing we had with squirrels get into it.
For the most part, police departments had nothing to do because so many people stayed home.
I don't think it's even going to make the history books other than the year 2000. I don't think this Y2K thing will even be remembered 100 years from now.
Well, don't think this page in history was a non-event. Computers didn't shut down because people took precautions, and now we're better off.
I think what it did, it really made a lot of our business and industry, local government, and everything much stronger in the fact that if we did have something, whether it was Y2K, a tornado, or anything like that, we were better prepared.
Never before has the world anticipated one moment on the calendar for so long, almost expecting disaster. The 2 and the 3 zeros did not create a disaster, but instead created an awareness of computer maintenance and the need to have emergency plans in place. In Cedar Rapids, Joe Coffey, KCRG, TV9 News, Nightcast.
One New Year's Eve party in Cedar Rapids actually did have a blackout. A big party was underway at that house, but it turned out they had plugged in too many electrical appliances and simply blew a fuse.
Well, the search for a way to handle all the garbage in Lynn County made for a real roller coaster story in eastern Iowa this year. Last summer, the Blue Stem Solid Waste Board learned a new federal airport rule would eliminate a proposed new landfill site in Lynn County. But in the fall, the board learned that those rules didn't apply. In the meantime, Blue Stem had gone to court to get a refund from landowners. TV9's Dave Fransman says the Blue Stem saga is a story that will continue well into 2001.
Since June of 1999, the Blue Stem Board had eyed this 425-acre site between Highway 30 and the Cedar River as a new location for a landfill. But in June of 2000, that controversial plan hit a roadblock. Board members found out that a new FAA rule would prohibit any new landfill within 6 miles of an airport runway. The Bluestem board voted to abandon the site and went to court to get former owners to refund the $2.5 million land purchase price.
Now, 4 months later, we learned...
Then in September, there was another real twist. Bluestem learned that the earlier interpretation was wrong. This site could still qualify as a landfill. But the feeling was there's no going back.
The board has given no indication that there will be any change in direction from the decision that was made in June to abandon.
Well, with a statement like that, you might think it's safe to assume that whatever news Bluestem makes in 2001 would probably not concern the Hennessy family as much, nor this particular proposed landfill site here. But the neighbors who have opposed the plan for nearly 2 years now are not ready to make that assumption.
Opponents say a Hennessy site landfill is still on a list of long-term options, in spite of a second Bluestem vote this week to abandon the plan. Neighbors say until they see a plan to make this area, say, a park or a housing development, they'll remain wary.
There's still some voice on the board, at least, that the Hennessy property is still an option. They're still talking about landfills. So it's just hard to know.
Landfill or no landfill, the year 2001 will probably bring some major decisions about the future of Bluestem. Early next year, the board will consider a list of long-term garbage options.
At the beginning of the year, I think there will be a lot of discussion and deliberation by our board on not only how waste is going to be managed in Linn County, but also who will be managing that waste.
Even with a planned small expansion at this site on County Home Road, Bluestem still has only 5 or 6 years of landfill life remaining. Next year could be the key in deciding what next and where for all this trash. Dave Ransman, KCRG, TV9 News, Nightcast.
The owners of the proposed landfill site have appealed to the Iowa Supreme Court to stop the return of the purchase price to Bluestem. It could take a year to 18 months to decide this case.
And we'll be covering it all the way.
We will.
This is the Nightcast before Christmas. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Nightcast before Christmas. Every year is a year full of highs and lows, joys and sorrows, and the year 2000 was no different.
You probably remember 40-year-old Tracy Carson, who disappeared without a trace October 6th. Since then, family and friends have organized several search parties, and police have found some of Tracy's belongings, but still nothing has led them to Tracy. TV9's Renee Chu shows us the Carson family's Christmas wish is to have Tracy home safe and sound.
See, I told you, you always win, don't I?
Having 8-year-old Isabella around is a mixed blessing for her grandmother, Donna Stock.
You didn't win.
She brings laughter and charm back into this empty nest. But her living here is also a reminder that Isabella's mother, Tracy Carson, is missing. Donna says she's doing her best, taking care of her daughter's daughter.
Oh, we talk about it different times, and I try to be very truthful with her because I think she needs to know the truth.
But the truth of how Tracy disappeared is still a mystery. Donna and her other daughters hosted a surprise 40th birthday party for Tracy at Polly's Place, a Waterloo tavern. Around 11:30 on Friday, October 6th, the crowd decided to move the party here at Polly's Place to somewhere else. As the crowd was breaking up, Tracy's sister and some friends were up at the front of the bar talking to some people, and when they returned to the table where they were sitting, they noticed Tracy was gone.
We didn't see anything, and we looked in the bathrooms for her, and we looked outside and did not see a trace of her.
For weeks, it was believed Polly's Place was the last place Tracy was seen. That's what her family printed on these flyers posted all over town. But police say Tracy may have appeared elsewhere that night.
We've been able to verify that she was at a couple of different places.
One of those places may have been at this adult venue called Tuxedo Show Club. In November, police were investigating reports that Tracy was seen here the night of October 6th. Police also say they found some of Tracy's belongings dumped on the side of this road about 10 miles east of Waterloo.
The longer it is from the time she's been missing until now, we have to suspect foul play, you know. But until we know what happened to Tracy, we're still considering this a missing persons case.
Family and friends tried to turn the case around by conducting their own search parties, but 2 weekends of trekking through woods and scouring area lakes turned up little evidence.
The Santa's gone to red and the tree's gone to green.
And for Tracy's mother, the days of waiting have turned into months. Donna says she focuses on staying strong for her family. That keeps her busy most days, but the nights, she says, are the hardest.
I talk to God and I talk to Tracy to let me know where you are, what has happened. But I still have that little ray of hope that she will come home to us. And that I don't want to give up.
And until there are answers, Donna won't give up, for her sake and for Isabella's. In Waterloo, Renee Chu, KCRG TV9 News, Nightcast.
In addition to Isabella, Tracy has 2 sons. They're staying with their father in Rochester, Minnesota. If you have any information that could lead to Tracy, call the Waterloo Police Department.
Another story that really touched our lives this year was the strange disappearance and then the sad discovery of Bob Fletcher. TV9's Craig Brown looks back at this story.
Margie Fletcher married her sweetheart Bob in 1955. For 45 years they celebrated life together. This Christmas will be Margie's first without her husband.
As I've said to people, it really hasn't sunk in yet, which sounds ridiculous since June 23rd and then September 15th when they found him.
The 60-year-old husband and father was last seen alive on June 23rd. He played tennis with a buddy and was going to stop by his Lake McBride cabin on his way home. He never made it. Within a matter of days, the family posted a $10,000 reward for any leads. Riders searched on horseback, and the Cedar Rapids and Solon communities mounted a massive foot search, but still no sign of Bob.
I personally am praying a lot because I think we need to do that.
We feel real bad and sad and everything, so we're going to try to do as much as possible, stick around as much as possible, and just be there for him.
I think Bob was very well liked. I think a lot of people, even though it wasn't happening to them, they could imagine what it might be like to go through, and they all pitched in to help us.
In July, the family more than doubled the reward to $25,000. Professional divers combed the lake, but still no word, only questions. Did Bob Fletcher drive off, or was he taken against his will? Was he still alive? Nearly 3 months after he disappeared, the sheriff pulled Fletcher's car from Lake McBride with Fletcher inside. The DNR had lowered the water level to repair the shore, and a neighbor spotted the car.
That vehicle might have been there and never been discovered for a long time.
Bob Fletcher's car was found here, less than half a mile from his home. But neighbors say he had no business driving down this one-way road that ends in the lake, and uncovering his car may have raised more questions than answers. Doctors say Bob showed no signs of heart attack, and the car he was driving was found in park. It may not have been the answer the family was searching for, but it was finally over.
If there's goodness to come out of this, it's the number of people that we didn't realize that my dad impacted.
Just, having him around, having his love, talking to someone at dinner time.
This Christmas, 7 grandkids remember a smile from a man all of eastern Iowa will never forget.
The Fletcher family set up 2 memorial funds in Bob's name, one with the Cedar Valley Humane Society and the other with the University of Iowa Foundation in care of the men's tennis team. Marge Fletcher is spending this Christmas with her family.
And there's more to come on this Nightcast before Christmas. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to tonight's Nightcast before Christmas. 7 months ago, a tornado hit the town of Dunkerton, and it left the landscape there looking like a bomb site.
Boy, did it ever. TV9 covered the story for several days, and we found families devastated from the violent storms in a town that had just recovered from flooding the year before. But we also found how much people cared for their neighbors. Volunteers and strangers gathered right after the tornado hit to help several people, one family in particular. You'll be amazed at how they've recovered with a little help from their friends.
Oh, protect her.
Steve Mills watched his mother's farm go up into the clouds.
Oh, this thing don't know what it wants to do.
This is the home video Steve's family took from their farm as the twister approached, wiping out Polly Mills' property, but not touching theirs 1 field away.
Lift up over those buildings. My God, this thing's huge. Oh man, it wiped out Orchard Grove. Look at that. Look at all those sticks and destruction. Oh, I'm afraid to look. I think that's my shed.
On May 11th, Polly Mills was heading home. She saw the tornado hit. Sam, her mentally handicapped son, was in the house, then was swept up into the funnel. Polly was at her property just minutes later.
It's hard to say what I thought. It was just awful. There was nothing, just absolutely nothing. Where the house was, you know, the house was a focal point, was gone.
Steve found his brother Sam thrown into an uprooted tree hole. But the irony here, Sam can't speak. He can't tell anyone about his violent dance with the tornado. He was mud-caked, bloody, and his leg broken.
I can't begin to imagine the terror that went through him.
Because when I first got here, I really thought he'd be out in the field, or I didn't know where I was going to find him. Say, when my eyes met his, that burned right into my soul, you know. That was one of the happiest moments of my life, bar none.
Steve and his wife Deneen say volunteers began to appear immediately in numbers the family couldn't believe.
I mean, that was just amazing. There were so many people that showed up. It was just like, wow, thank you.
While Polly stayed at the hospital with Sam, cleanup just kept going. Then a construction crew, many friends and neighbors, showed up to help Steve rebuild Polly's house.
Words can't say how grateful I am to these people.
Steve's tried to pay Vern Jackson, a partner in Hudson Construction, but so far Jackson won't accept any money. Steve said it's been a humbling experience. 7 months later, this is what Polly's new home looks like, on the same ground that was churned and thrown. Twisted trees are only signs that something happened here, something indescribable.
But we had a double row of trees out there and more big trees, and they're gone.
Polly's able to see that from her new kitchen sink and shows us just what a beautiful job the volunteers did. And throughout the house, she shows us some of the things that miraculously survived the devastation. In a 3-drawer chest, her mother's German Bible. And in the laundry room, an antique frame.
That was out with the debris. They found that, I don't know where, but they found both of those in the pictures, and Grandpa's picture was torn.
And in the basement, an addition that Steve says brings the family peace of mind.
Well, this is our tornado shelter, so the next time we have a tornado, we'll be prepared.
It's safe to say Polly Mills has had a tough life. She lost her husband when Sam was 3, raised kids alone on little or nothing, and then...
You know, and she hit 70 and then her house blows away, so... It's, you know, she's got a lot of faith. She's had a lot to go through over the years.
And this Christmas, Polly's faith is still intact. A message for us all. The unsinkable Polly Mills, I call her. The Mills family is planning a big thank you party for all of the volunteers who helped them clean up and rebuild, and they're hoping to hold it on the tornado anniversary date.
And I hear they have a special order on the weather.
Oh yeah, Denny, hear this. They want it clear and calm on May 11th.
Well, speaking of the weather tonight, summer in Cedar Rapids means minor league baseball. Pro teams have played here for more than 100 years, and dozens of top players have come through on their way to major league careers. The current team, the Colonels, are a single-A affiliate of the Anaheim Angels. And now, after one more season, they'll be playing in a brand new stadium.
About a year from now, January of 2002, hopefully we'll be 70% completion on our new project.
That new project is a $14 million baseball stadium for the Cedar Rapids Colonels. For the last half-century, baseball fans have enjoyed the sights and sounds of minor league ball in the cozy confines of Vets Memorial Stadium, and it's been a great run.
We're lucky that Major League Baseball let us work in our old facility that served us well, but it's pretty well used up, and there isn't much left there. But for 50 years, it was a wonderful old ballpark.
And now that old ballpark will disappear. It's hard to visualize here in the snow right now, but this is where the new Vets Memorial Stadium will go, right behind the old one. It'll become a reality thanks to Cedar Rapids voters who approved a special property tax levy this past summer. That levy will raise nearly $5 million of the $14 million for the new ballpark. Another $3 million plus comes from a state grant. Then there's $1 million from the Hall Perrine Foundation, and the remaining $5 million comes from a new Colonel's lease with the city and various fundraising efforts. It's an ongoing project, but one that Wally Krause says is right on schedule.
We've had people at the Chamber and the Veterans Memorial Commission and naturally the baseball people, and we've just got a good team and we're keeping it going, and there's going to be some wonderful things happening in the coming years.
Wally says the Colonels have signed a new 2-year extension with the Anaheim Angels. Now they're hoping the Angels will give Cedar Rapids a quality ball club to go with the new stadium, and that's something that a lot of people think will be a real winning combination. A lot of baseball to come in Cedar Rapids.
That and those good peanuts in the stands.
And the hot dog.
And our Nightcast before Christmas will continue right after this. The year 2000 brought Iowa City Dr. Chuck Huss a few steps closer to the top of the world.
In May, Huss made his second attempt to become the first Iowan to reach the top of Mount Everest. But then on summit day, stomach problems forced the doctor to turn around. TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner tells how Huss is already making plans to climb Everest a third time.
When you're getting ready to climb to the top of Mount Everest, you want everything to go right. Whether it's a blessing from a monk to packing all the right gear, getting to the top requires everything to be in place and done right. It's the little things that can have a big impact, as Iowa City Dr. Chuck Huss learned on summit day.
The second guessing was to treat the water up at the highest camp because it wasn't getting boiled enough, and I think that's what led to my illness.
An illness that set in just as the doctor and the expedition were preparing to make the final push to the top of Everest.
What happened to me was I essentially got food poisoning, so I had vomiting and diarrhea at a fairly uncomfortable place. You had to go outside, and the temperature was constantly below zero, and even in the afternoons, and then the wind's blowing 20 to 30 miles an hour minimum, and it's an uncomfortable place to head out of the tent.
Not only is the weather unbearable at Camp 4, but the air is thin and climbers need oxygen just to breathe. Here, simple things like packing a sleeping bag can wear you out.
Well, you're already physiologically quite challenged. You're really near death at 26,000 feet trying to stay up there, and you're deteriorating all the time you're there.
Still, Huss says he isn't entirely disappointed that he had to turn around. He says with each trip, he learns more about the mountain and what it takes to reach the peak.
The mountain seemed a lot less intimidating this time since it was sort of a known entity. It was a little frustrating, but you know, in mountaineering, you take what comes and you try to make good decisions so that you don't get hurt and that you give yourself the opportunity to go back if everything's right.
Before he left for this trip, Huss said it was probably his last attempt at Everest. But now something about climbing the mountain is drawing him back.
It's something I think about, and it won't be in 01, but I hope to get back there sometime. We'll just have to see. It's very addicting. a lot of people that are really great climbers have taken several opportunities to get to the top, and you learn something each time you go, as far as improving your odds of getting to the top. It's still my own personal goal that I'm after, and I'd sure like another try.
From the Iowa City newsroom, Mike Wagner, KCRG TV9 News.
Whew. A film crew followed that expedition to Mount Everest, and it made a movie about the group's efforts to clean up the mountain. This was the largest attempt to remove waste and oxygen bottles from the lower and upper camps of Everest.
I think I'll just stay at the bottom and watch them wait.
Yeah, your stomach settling down yet?
No, not at all. Well, you know, there were so many other stories that made headlines in 2000, like the Cedar Rapids school bond issue, where voters agreed to finance $46 million in bonds to pay for school improvements, but only after voting down a sales tax idea.
The multi-million-dollar Iowa Child project is still in development. Cedar Rapids city leaders hope to put it in the City of Five Seasons, but then Coralville moved into the picture, and a site there is now the proposed home of the Iowa Child.
And don't forget, hometown boy makes good. Kurt Warner's Cinderella quarterback story with the St. Louis Rams. The Cedar Rapids native helped his team take home those coveted Super Bowl rings.
And the nation watched Iowa in January when our state held ground and stayed first in the nation with the political caucuses. A new batch of presidential hopefuls could be back in, well, some are already saying in less than 2 years.
Oh, yeah. And of course, you mentioned earlier, the presidential election took center stage the last few weeks of this year. Both George W. Bush and Al Gore crossed our state several times on their way to what became a historic showdown.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed the Nightcast before Christmas. Season's greetings and a Merry Christmas to all of you.
And thank you for watching us tonight and throughout the year. Good night from all of us here at TV9.
The Nightcast Before Christmas has been sponsored by Aegon. Just what you're looking for at aegonins.com.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. His name all oppression shall cease.